Hey everybody, this is Kara Crosswhite Brindle. Welcome back to another episode of the Pivoting Practice. This video series is all about mental health professionals who've pivoted in their own practice. So they're not just seeing clients, they're diversifying, doing other things. Today we have Stephanie, and she's going to talk about her pivot in her practice. Stephanie, thanks for being here.
Thank you. So I guess I will share about my pivot. It's a little bit focused on trying to kind of get back in touch with things that I really enjoy, which is learning about people, hearing their stories, feeling connected to their journey with mental health, as well as just their impact their interaction with society and culture. And that's what millennial mental health is supposed to be all about, and what my podcast hopefully brings to other people too, is that also that connectivity of hearing people's stories.
Awesome. So I know that you've done a bunch of different things and then came to doing the podcast itself. So obviously that was your inspiration. Where did you start before coming into a podcast situation?
Well, I originally started with a solo practice, and then I grew to a group practice. Then I started another side business along the way because I just needed one more thing. I do billing, credentialing, and like a VA service business. And then in 2021, when I really reached my point of feeling uncreative and uninspired, I was talking to my spouse about what I miss about interacting with people and what I felt like was missing. And something that I was always interested in college was being a journalist. And I figured a way that I could do that now without having to go back and get a whole nother degree was to start a podcast. And that's kind of how I got here.
Awesome. Well, I know that it's quite an effort to do a podcast. There's probably some trial and error in doing this and doing it well. What's one of the things that's been most rewarding? I know you talked about connecting to people, hearing their stories. Anything else you want to highlight that's been particularly rewarding?
I think just hearing other people tell me about, oh, I've listened and I really connected with this, and my listenership has actually grown, which I don't know why, but that was like surprising to me. I was like, oh, people actually like care about mental health. That's so nice. And I've even gotten emails from people that I've had on my podcast, like afterwards saying like, oh, I'm so happy I got a chance to do this. Like it was really rewarding for me to talk about this with someone that I haven't, had this conversation before, especially the non-therapists that I've had on the podcast. I feel like they don't live in mental health and talk about mental health often in their lives. And so having them come on and talk about mental health in their like arena, I think was really cool for them. Like I had a nurse on, I had a yoga therapist on, and even though yoga therapist deals with mental health just in a very different way. So it was cool to have different guests like that on.
Yeah, well, I imagine for them it was a point of vulnerability if they had never done a podcast interview before or were telling their story for the first time. So, kind of along that vein, what has been maybe one of the more challenging aspects of running a podcast creating a podcast, that kind of thing?
I would say just getting it up and running. I think for me, reaching out to people to have come on my podcast is a little intimidating. Most of the people that I have on it so far are people that I know directly. So trying to get people that I don't know on the podcast has been a bit of a challenge, and I guess a growth edge for me of putting myself out there and saying, hey, do you want to be on my podcast? Even though I don't really know you very well. So that I would say, as someone who's a little bit more introverted and not super marketing oriented, my practice is mainly insurance. Because of that reason, I don't enjoy marketing, even though podcasts oftentimes can be used as a marketing tool. That's not what my podcast has been for me. So I think that part is a little bit of a discomfort that I'm still working through.
Gotcha. Well, I imagine you have the lived experience now as you said your audience is growing, the podcast is out there. Where do people find the podcast if they want to check it out?
It's on Spotify only, because that's another growth edge, is technology and podcasting. I figured out how to get on Spotify, but I have not figured out how to get on other platforms. But Spotify's been good to me so far. I think the algorithm is working. So it's getting to people. So that's exciting.
Absolutely. So if people wanted to talk to you further about your process, how you got set up, the technology you've used, the lessons you've learned, how would they reach you directly?
Well, as of right now, I just having people reach me on my business email, which is hello@wellmindedcounseling.com, as well as directly through my website. I have a whole page on my website about millennial mental health, and my website's wellmindedcounseling.com. So those are the best ways to reach me. Millennial Mental Health has its own Facebook page, so you can go
Nice.
follow me there. You can also message me through that page. Yeah.
Awesome. If they wanted to be a guest for any of the things that we've talked about today, is that also where they should go, is the Facebook page?
Yes, I would love people to reach out and want to be my guest. That would make it easier on me. And I love it when new people are interested in getting to know me, because I'm interested in getting to know new people, just sometimes a little bit more shy about it. But I am excited to meet new people.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I feel like the podcast world has really exploded in the pandemic as another way to connect, much like you've said today. Is there any last thought that you have for this group, these viewers who might be considering starting a podcast, but maybe want to learn something or learn from others? What's one thing that you want to leave them with?
I think it's really important to have like a specific message that you're going for. I feel like my first season, I struggled to figure out like, what do I want this to be about? Where I feel like my second season, I really kind of honed in a little bit more. So trying to have a clear picture and ask for support. I don't need to do it all. I have someone who edits my podcast for me because, again, technology.
Yeah,
So delegation is also another important thing.
right. I imagine it's quite time consuming otherwise to do it all.
Yes, yes, it is.
Absolutely. Well, I'm excited to put the information for the podcast below this video when it launches. And I know that people can outreach you and see what other questions they might have for you as someone who's done it, is doing it still, has some tidbits for them. I think that's amazing. So, Stephanie, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. Viewers, stay tuned for more serial entrepreneurs and entrepreneur therapists who are doing amazing work in this pivoting practice. We'll see you next time.